Hi, I'm Dave, and I want to show you how to use a DMM. Now, what are these things? What are they for? DMM is digital multimeter. It's named that because it can do voltage, it can do current measurements, it can do resistance measurements. Some of them can do temperature, some of them can do capacitance. Today, I'm just going to go over voltage, current, and resistance, which are the most important ones to know when using a DMM. So before we get started on where to plug things in and how to connect different parts, I want to talk about the symbols on it. So all DMMs, or almost all DMMs, have these symbols. So if you're talking DC, current, or voltage, if it's a direct current signal that you're measuring, then it's going to have this symbol with the dots above the solid line. If you're looking at an AC signal, then it's going to have this squiggle line. And the last one that you would want to know is this continuity, and that's going to be if you want the DMM to beep whenever you touch anything that's 0 ohms. It's nice that you don't have to look at the screen. You can just jump around from point to point and wait for a beep to happen if you were looking for a short. So DC, that would be something like a battery or a USB port. Something like that would be direct current. AC, something like that would be if you wanted to plug it into the wall to see if you have power at your wall outlet. That would be an AC signal. Okay, so let's get started with voltage. How do you measure voltage with a DMM? Well, the first thing is we're going to rotate this knob over to the 20 volt range. You want to find the range that is higher than the number you think you'll be measuring. For instance, I think I'm going to be measuring up to 5 volts with this circuit today. So I put it on the 20 volt range. That's because 2 volts wouldn't be enough to measure my 5 volt signal. Okay. The next thing is connecting the test leads. Sometimes these are pointed, these are clips that'll make it easier for me to measure. It doesn't matter as long as they'll fit. So in the common, in the middle, that is where my black one's going to go. And then on this one says V, it says ohms, it says MA, which is milliamps, and temperature. So I'm going to be measuring voltage first, so I'm going to plug it into the V hole. All right. Now, the circuit I'm going to measure is very simple. It's a resistor and a diode right here. So this is a battery that I have hooked up as 3 AAA batteries in a nice little holder. This is a resistor, which I have set at 1 kilo ohm. And this is a diode, a light emitting diode, an LED, that is going to light up when I run it. Okay, so I want to know first how much voltage my battery is. So I'm going to hook up the DMM in voltage mode to this. How? Well, you measure voltage across things. So if you want to see what the voltage of your batteries are, you're going to measure the voltage across your batteries. What does that mean? So I'm going to have a little drawing here to show you what that means. That is how you're going to hook up the voltmeter. This is going to be the black wire here, and up here is going to be the red wire. See how it's across the source? Okay, so I'm going to show you how to hook it up. So I've got on my table my 3 AAA batteries, my resistor, which is connected on one end to this red wire here, and the resistor goes to the LED, and the other end of the LED goes to the black wire. Okay, so if I wanted to measure the voltage, I'm going to hook my red wire up to the same place that my red wire is connected on the breadboard. And then I'm going to hook my black wire up to the same place that my black wire is hooked up on the breadboard. And then I'm going to bring my DMM around, and look at that, 4.69 volts. Since each AAA battery measures about 1 volt, I have them adding up with each other, so that makes it 4.69, which is about right. Good. So that's how we measured the voltage of our battery. Now, what if we wanted to measure the voltage of our LED? What's the voltage across this? all we have to do, since our black one's already hooked up to the negative end of the battery, I can move this positive end and connect it to the end of my LED. And there we go. It's 1.88 volts across the LED. What will that look like on the schematic? I took my voltmeter and I connected it just like that. All right. So that's voltage. How then do we measure current? Now this is where a lot of people get mixed up, and the reason is that current has to be measured through a component. So if you were to measure current with a DMM, you have to direct the flow of current away from your circuit and into the DMM. So for instance, if I just took this right here and hooked an ammeter up, it wouldn't work. And the reason is ammeters have to have the current diverted through it. What do I mean by that? You have to make a cut. I cut this lower wire and I divert it like diverting the flow of water. You want to divert the flow of current through the ammeter. So before, it would go from this battery up through the resistor, down through the LED, and then it would finish by going through this wire down here. However, I cut that wire, so now all the current is diverted to go through this ammeter. And since it's going through this device, it has an opportunity to measure how much current is flowing through it. All right, so how does that look down on the board? I've got my circuit here. It's still running. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this LED from the negative terminal of the battery. Okay? So what that does is it cuts the flow of current. And then over here on the DMM, I'm going to switch it to the 200 milliamp range. That's right here. And see how this still says milliamp on this red connection. Oftentimes you have to move to another connection point when you're switching from current to volts. However, in this case, it can handle up to 200 milliamps in this position. If I wanted to measure maybe an amp or two, I'd have to move this connector to here. But thankfully, we don't have that problem today. So we'll just leave it connected as it was. And then we're going to return over here and connect our red wire to the bottom end of the LED and the black wire to the other end of my battery. So now all of the current has to go from the battery through this red wire, through this resistor, through this diode, and then through my DMM over here, and then back to the battery. Remember, all current has to flow in a complete loop, and so we're forcing it through the DMM in order to complete the circuit. And now I'm measuring 2.7 milliamps. Great. So I've got voltage, I've got current, I know what all of my measurements are. The last thing that I want to measure today is resistance. Now you measure resistance in the same way you measure voltage. The only difference is when a resistor is connected in the circuit, there are other things that are connected with it. So if you had, for instance, the circuit hooked up as it was before when we were measuring voltage, and you wanted to measure the resistance across this resistor right here, the problem with that is that there's already current flowing through it. There's something happening with that resistor. It's hard to measure a resistor when there's already current flowing through it, just from the way the DMM measures it. So the trick is to remove the resistor from the circuit. And then you know for sure you're getting a good measurement. So once you remove the resistor from the circuit, you can connect one end of the DMM to one end of the resistor, and the other end of the DMM to the second resistor pin. And then we'll go over here, and we'll rotate to 2 kilo ohm resistance, and I get 0.998 kilo ohms on this resistor, which is very close to 1K, which is exactly what we expect to see. So we know it's done correctly. Alright, so that's how you use a DMM in voltage, current, and resistance mode. I hope it helps you out.